How have your parents unintentionally fricked you up? Mom was very controlling. She meant well, but her overbearing nature only made me a better liar than a productive member of society. Seems this is not uncommon. I can't speak for you all, but I know my mom loves me. She's just flawed like the rest of us. Legit this. I can't say exactly when I simply stopped telling her the truth when going out with friends, GFs, etc. But my life became a lot simpler because of it. Only problem is now I am a borderline pathological liar. She tiger momed the crap out of me, specifically when it came to classical music. She was a violin teacher and had me play piano, but that didn't stop her from getting very involved. What was the worst incident? When she got so mad at how I was practicing, she threw the piano bench out the door. When she scribbled all over my music in a rage and had to buy a new book so my teacher wouldn't see she lost her crap. When she was screaming at me in the car after a lesson and just laid into the horn while driving down a busy street. When she drove me, crying, to my friend's house for a scheduled play date and made me ring the doorbell and explain to my friend I couldn't stay because I hadn't practiced enough. It was a 10+ year saga of insane blow-ups and tears that only stopped when I left for college and quit. But I'm the lucky one. I was the fighter. My sister was the people pleaser. Once my mom gave up on me, she focused the full brunt of her attention on her. Now my sister's got an undergrad degree in music and a whole lot of angst about whether she even likes a goddamn viola or has just been forced into her entire life. Sorry that happened to you. Your mom sounds insane. My attachment style. They only paid attention to me when I acted out because they were so busy with my older sister and her accomplishments. If only you were nicer, they wouldn't bully you. Your sister can make friends, so you can too. Why do you have these weird hobbies? No wonder you have no friends. What is it? Are you too lazy or too shy to make friends? Got diagnosed with autism eventually, but that was after 40 years of beating myself senseless over my inability to fit in. Always telling me that the neighborhood kids were bad and I should never play with them, leading me to become very introverted and shy, feeling super awkward walking past all the kids who were playing. Then when I was 15ish, parents started asking me why I have no friends, making me feel like I had a problem and was different. Due to lack of interaction with kids my age, I now avoid conflict and have weak social skills. It took me years of practice to be comfortable with people. Ended up having very good friends in high school and university, but even after all these years still feel awkward meeting and befriending new people. Oh, I also forgot constantly comparing me to other kids, telling me how they were doing better at school, had more friends, were so social, etc. It really fricked up my self-confidence. I remember when I got into the best uni in my country was the first time my dad said he is proud of me, school and grades wise. Before that it was always look how good Jack's grades are or how smart Joe is, SMH. This isn't the worst thing in the world, but my parents strongly instilled in me the need to care about other people's feelings and kindness, to the point of being overly kind and accommodating. It led to me apologizing too much, bending over backwards for people who didn't deserve it and letting people take advantage of me. I am proud of being a person that cares for others, but it's taken a while for me to learn how to set boundaries and maintain them in friendships and relationships. I'm working on it. By never taking any problems I had seriously, getting angry at me when I was having a bad mental health day, and denying that I had depression. You're just doing this for attention. You have no reason to be depressed etc. Even though I was clinically diagnosed, it has led me to never speak about my problems to the point where I have breakdowns in my bedroom and then pretend I'm fine, believing I'm a burden and that no one, not even my friends, want to deal with me. By constantly interrupting me when I'd try to say something, or talking over me, or by very obviously not paying attention, listening, caring about what I'd say. I've grown up to be a very quiet person who very rarely makes any effort to say anything to anyone. I went through the same thing. Eventually I just stopped sharing any developments I had with them and kept everything to myself. My mom, by helicoptering me between all of middle school and high school. As a result, I was never able to develop good study habits because I never got the feeling that I was doing it for me. I felt like I was doing it for her. When I was in 5th grade, I told my mom about a kid who was bullying me. One day, when she was picking me up after school, she got out of the car and threatened the kid. Something along the lines of, "If you pick on my baby again, you will regret it." That fricked up my social life until at least 10th grade. By constantly criticizing me. As an adult, I sit in meetings at work and wait for someone to tell me how stupid, wrong, inappropriate something I said or did was. It's awesome. Thanks for the silver. Reddit friend, we'll make it. Exact same thing with me. No matter what I do, I never feel like I am going to be good enough. One had an affair. Told me not to tell the other. The other knew and did things like bugged the house phones and had me try to follow them around. Being oldest kid sucked. Completely stuck in the middle. Eventually escaped to the sanity of the infantry. They demand I pay for things, which is fine in itself, really, except I wasn't really allowed to have a job until right before I left for college. Basically any gift money I got from relatives they somehow took. Now it's even worse, as I'm unemployed due to some serious health issues. Whenever I hear, "You need to pay for that," all I can think is, with what income? Disclaimer, they were never short on cash. This was purely an assert control thing. Semi-helicoptering me for far too long. They subtlety controlled my life to the point I wasn't able to do a lot of things that were important to me, but it wasn't enough that I felt controlled and wanted to just snap and rebel against them. It took me a long time to start making decisions without prioritizing their approval above doing what I actually wanted to do. So I'm a little behind in a lot things that are important to me, because I never felt truly supported and free to develop myself the way I wanted to. When I was a kid, maybe 5 or 6, I was riding in the car with my mom. I was playing with a transformer toy and telling her about it. At some point, she stopped me and said something to the effect of, "Son, do I talk to you about makeup or clothes or anything I'm interested in?" I answered no. And she said, "Then I don't want to hear about Transformers, whatever you're playing with." In that moment, she just wanted me to shut up. BC, she didn't care. But over my life I've realized it destroyed my ability to talk about things I care about with people unless it's someone I'm very close to, so I come off as very boring until people get to know me. I would just like to say, I don't hate my mom or anything. She's a good person for the most part. She just doesn't pretend to care about things. Not her fault, but when my mom got cancer when I was 14, she kind of went crazy and really hurt me mentally. She controlled everything I ate because I was either too thin or too thick. Didn't allow me to hang out with my friends because she didn't know if she was going to make it through the night, and pulled me out of all my extracurriculars for the same reason. She made me eat cabbage soup and only cabbage soup for 2 weeks to lose weight. I was dubbed Stinky Alley by my classmates. I did not need to lose weight. Yeah, my dad was no peach either. I ran away from my mom that year to stay with my dad and got into an abusive relationship with a boy who controlled me and violated me, and my dad just loved him. At his house, my grades dropped because there was no physical place to do homework, and he didn't take me to any of my doctors or counseling appointments because there was nothing wrong with me after going through what my mom and boyfriend put me through. So, yeah, not really their faults, because mental illness is hard to treat, but it definitely screwed me up for a long time. I'm a 31-year-old mother in a very healthy and loving relationship now, but I have to give my successes and happiness to my partner's family and my therapists. They are the real MVPs. My dad also loved my controlling, intimidating, crazy, physical assaulting boyfriend when I was in high school. It really messed me up in a way. They didn't teach me much at all. I had to learn a lot from my friends, outside of proper manners. When I was a teenager, my dad would ask me to get him a Phillips head screwdriver, and when I said I had no idea what that was, he scolded me rather than teaching me. Welp, there's my childhood in a nutshell. My younger sister and I both hit puberty pretty early. We were healthy weights and active, but understandably were tired and had stretch marks. You know, like bodies get when they have rapid growth spurts and hormonal changes. Our parents had the genius idea of calling us in one night and telling us we needed to lose weight because we had stretch marks from being growing people. This is on top of years of ridiculous diets and fad routines, with no actual nutritional guidance. We would also get in trouble for not knowing how to cook, after being banned from the kitchen. What their hearts were trying to say was, we don't want you to have all of the health problems the rest of the extended family has. The actual result is an eating disorder I'm still fighting 16 years after that conversation. They pick on my younger brother now too, and I just want to scream. Hey dad, maybe put down the chips and eat a vegetable before you say anything about anybody else's body. OMG, I hate how people consider stretch marks equals fat. I'm like 135 pounds, underweight my whole life, and I have stretch marks and I've never even been over 140 pounds. My parents sent me crazy mixed messages. One day they would be telling me to not give a crap about what people think of me. Then the next day they would be like, don't wear that shirt with those pants. They don't match. People will think you don't have a sense of style. It really fricked with my nerves, man. Telling us we need to communicate more. Then, when we do communicate more, question how we could have conceived of some of the things we thought of. Or when my mother openly said depression comes from a chemical reaction. A moment when I recalled her asking my sister, what do you have to be depressed about? I'm an immigrant living in the United States. My parents tease me all the time about not knowing our history, culture, and speaking our language with an accent, forgetting that they didn't teach me much about either of them. Most of what I know about our history culture comes from American news outlets. I learned to speak the day-to-day language from them, but learned how to read and write and expanded my vocabulary all on my own. Growing up in the United States without a foundation for my identity really set me up for difficulty. I latched onto anything and anyone who I thought accepted me. It turned out that people were just taking advantage of me. It probably wasn't intentional, but I was never emotionally close with my parents. My parents had good intentions but didn't execute. I understand that they love me very much, but it just hurts me that I can't emotionally open up to them and vice versa. I'm seeing a trend of people talking about how different their relationships with their parents are as they grow older. For me, my parents don't seem to understand that I don't have the same interests from when I was a kid anymore. I have pretty different interests now that I'm older, and my parents don't seem to understand that. They seem stuck on the past, on not accepting the future. I'm not saying my parents are jerks about it, but they are pushing me to do one thing while I'm hiding what I'm really doing. They are really happy with what they think I'm doing, and I'm scared that it will break their hearts if I tell them what I'm really doing. Same, my dude. My mother was never really affectionate. No one in my family was, and she likes to complain that I never hug her when she's drunk, usually. My mom used to tell me I was stupid and useless when she got angry at me. Now I believe I'm stupid, useless, and can't achieve anything. At least I'm on a good mood RN, or this would have sent me straight to crying LOL. My father's words, which I'll carry with me forever as his legacy, are, God, you're useless. Completely hopeless. If you had half a brain, it would be lonely, expressed with spitting anger. If you're familiar with the animated movie Inside Out, that message constitutes one of my core memories. I didn't realize until I was an adult myself where my social awkwardness came from. I thought it was just me. Then I took a closer look at how my parents interact with others in daily life as compared to what I was seeing in college and eventually at work, and yep, all the social skills of a bent spoon between the two of them. So I had no one at home to learn from, and while I've largely learned how to fake it, it'll never come naturally. 100%. My mom is loud and talks with confidence but has no education or self-awareness, and my dad just awkwardly tries to get out of conversations by saying typical conversation enders and trying to make excuses as to why he can't chat. Emotionally distant parents. That's all my father knew growing up in his family, and my mother was as a successful daycare operator who was burned out after raising other people's children only to come home and have to do it again. Raised with the expectations of a grown man and a staff member, not a child. Every promise for something, quid pro quo, or request for another, going to the park to play, had to be written down with a date and signed, or else it would be fervently denied as if it never happened or insinuated I was making things up. Never breaking the sibling rivalry, silently allowing and mildly stoking the vitriol between my sibling and I to reach levels where we can't even be in the same area city without some cruel criticisms or sharp cutting commentary to be fired off. Now as a man in his 30s, I both detest what happened in my youth and appreciate the strengths and insights it provided me. I have an unreasonably thick skin to negative criticism and insults. I strive continually to become the best in my fields of interest and professional life. I strongly believe in maintaining a promise. And I continuously try to reconnect with my estranged sibling, knowing we are all we have in this world, though to no avail. It took my sister and I decades to move past this typical narc dynamic where they would pit us against one another. We grew up thinking the other was the favorite and resenting the other. Giving birth to me. My birth father has a whole host of physical health problems that run on his side of the family, and my birth mother has a laundry list of mental health issues that run on her side. They were two of the worst people to get together and have kids. Lack of discipline. Not like punishing me, but straight up discipline. I really struggle to commit to things, follow through, apply myself, because I always just give up or find myself thinking, what's the point? I feel this to some extent. I can follow through with things I care about, but as soon as it gets uncomfortable I am out. So my dad basically never interacted with me except to make dad jokes. My mom used me to vent about her problems because my dad didn't know how to discuss emotional topics. She also engaged me in long, boring one-sided conversations that I couldn't get out of without making her upset, and often asked me to go out and do things with her, which again, I couldn't refuse without making her upset. All this when I was already constantly exhausted from school and depression, and extremely introverted. So now I associate relationships of any kind with exhausting obligation. It's a big part of why I've always had difficulty developing a social life. I know this all came from a place of love, which is why I feel bad complaining about it, but it really damaged me. Also praising me for being smart rather than for working hard, which crippled my work ethic. I hear that's a pretty common one. Incidentally, I'm terrified of having kids because it seems like the slightest mistake on my part can frick them up for life. The first thing you described doesn't come from a place of love. It's an adult making a child take the emotional place of their spouse. It's unfair and really damaging. Kept me sheltered. My parents put on a front that we were kind of a Leave It to Beaver family where everything was perfect. When I went out into the world I wasn't prepared for the reality of life. I'd learned that everyone was basically good and decent and wasn't equipped to deal with crappy people. The same thing happened to my best friend growing up. Sadly, some of those friends taught him about drug use, and he spent the entirety of his 20s as a junkie. You name the drug, he was using it. He even died a couple of times. Paramedics brought him back both times, and his only regrets were the hospital bills. That is until he eventually got clean. I was about to go to a dance with my BF, and I had on a very pretty dress that I felt so beautiful, and so I showed my dad, and his response was, "Doesn't that make you look fat?" Though it was apparently a joke, but he knew I was self-conscious about my weight, and I've never felt more ashamed or worse in my life, and I've not seen him the same way since then. Life is fun. My mom did most everything around the house, so when I finally moved out I didn't know how to clean anything or wash, dry, fold, or iron clothes, cook food, or even use the oven stove. I got an apartment and had to teach myself everything. I went from basically only making cereal and ramen in the microwave to cooking some things for myself. Hamburger helper at first. Luckily I found a girl that was very patient with me and helped me with those things. Now we are married and we split the housework. Good on you for wanting to learn. Some people would just find a wife to replace their mother. My mom projected her insecurities onto me. Body image issues as a result. Always was called ungrateful. Now have a complex about accepting gifts, favors, help, etc. Even from my closest friends. On a less depressing note, my mom unintentionally pronounces a lot of things incorrectly, so it is kind of embarrassing whenever I attempt to say something in conversation, only to get baffled looks that indicate I have been living a phonetic lie up until that point. Haha. By staying together for the good of the kids despite not loving each other, arguing at every opportunity. I'm 27 and have no idea what love between partners looks like. I think I learned to be anxious from my mother. Do I think it's my genetics? No, not really. I think my nature is to be chill, but every time I start to relax and enjoy life, there's a little voice in the back of my head, my mother's voice, telling me I need to get back up and be on guard because I might not be doing things the way she'd want. I love my mom, but she was a very scared parent, and her fears for me manifested as disapproval in many of my activities. I empathize heavily. They made alcohol such a taboo, untouchable subject in our house that I didn't know how to control myself when I went to college. I was bordering on alcoholic by end of freshman year of college. Somehow got my head out of my butt and pulled myself together. Now I rarely ever drink and never drink to get drunk. My parents let me have a taste really young, when I was curious about it. As a kid, it sucked, and so I made up my mind that I didn't like it, and I've never been a fan since. It's sort of like the child-rearing version of the Streisand effect. If they hadn't made a big deal out of it, you might have not been as curious when you finally got out from under their thumb. No matter how much I tell myself it's okay to be gay, I have this nagging in my head from when my mother would harass me when I was a teen about being gay. She'd tell me I'd go to heck, kick me out of the car, yell at me, over 10 years later, and it'll creep up every now and then and I'll get that feeling of, man, I wish I wasn't gay. I don't know why I get that feeling every few years. I love who I am, but then I get a severe bout of depression and I end up hating myself. You don't need to continue with these people just because they are family. We can always choose to let go of toxic folks. Just forgive them and move on. They sent me and my siblings to a Christian private school. The ways that school fricked me and my oldest sibling up cannot be understated. They once suspended my sibling because he figured out the password pattern and turned himself in. Like, he didn't hack it or steal the list. He just noticed there was a pattern to password generation, confessed he had figured it out, and got a 3-day suspension for his trouble. My dad and his siblings went to Catholic schools, the kind where nuns whack your hands with rulers, and suffering brings you closer to God. Whenever I was about to sneeze, my dad would say don't sneeze. I would probably laugh at first, which would stop the whole process dead in its tracks. To this day, however, I can't sneeze if anyone is making eye contact with me, if someone is aware that I'm about to sneeze, or even if the TV is too loud. I have to either walk away from people or pause whatever I'm watching to get the deed done. Thanks, Dad. Thank you for being the most non-abusive comment in this entire thread. Well, first, she didn't believe me about my stepdad molesting me, but no one in my family did. Just thought I was trying to get attention, but he was abusive to her in other ways and she just took it, thinking she was giving us a better life because she wouldn't be a single mom. We had a better house, etc. So that's number one. When she realized he was just a piece of crap, she started drinking again after 14 years of sobriety. I don't think she intentionally wanted to ruin my memories of her, but she got cancer and died shortly after. So all I remember is her last few years, which was drunk, pathetic mom. That's number two. But the one that really fricked me up is on her deathbed she refused to talk to me about any of it. Her feelings, what she wanted for me in life, if she'll miss me, nothing. She waited until I left one night and refused life-saving treatment. When I went the next day she was comatose and we never spoke anything again. She died within 12 hours. Don't ever fricking do that crap to your child. Thanks a lot, Mom. They fricked me right over by not letting me express my own opinions of certain topics. I would bring my own opinion to the conversation, then they would belittle me and completely shut it down. They would mostly force a lot of their belief systems on me when I would have an opposing opinion on certain subjects. My dad was a womanizer that used to hit on women in front of me when I was a teenager and was still married to my mum. I had a problem with flirting when I reached adulthood as it brought back the creepy feeling I had when my dad would do it in front of me. On the plus side, I have never cheated on anyone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.